What does Jesus say about murder and adultery? Today, we will be diving into chapter 5, verses 21 through 30 to uncover a deeper meaning behind these deeds.
Hey everybody, I'm Griffin, and this is Hudson, and welcome back to Bear the Cross.
The Sermon on the Mount is one of the most famous sermons in the Bible, where Jesus breaks down how we should live as followers of Christ. Welcome to the Sermon on the Mount.
I would say it's a pretty good rule of thumb not to murder. I mean, can we agree? However, Jesus takes this one step further in verse 22 by saying, "But I say, if you are even angry with someone, you are subject to judgment."
Now, Jesus is not saying that murder and anger are on the same level, but instead he's making a connection. He challenges us to look at the root of the issue. We see this again in verses 27 through 30 when Jesus talks about adultery.
In verse 27, Jesus says, "You shall not commit adultery." But further in verse 28, he says that if you even look at a woman lustfully, you have already committed adultery with her in your heart. Again, he's challenging us to look at the root of the problem.
The idea here is that anger leads to murder and lust leads to adultery. He challenges us to pay more attention to these feelings, and when they do come, to confront them head on. Take them for face value and use what you can to help mitigate them. The cleaner your heart is, the easier it will be to follow God.
Revisiting anger, Jesus calls us not to let our issues with others linger. In verse 25, he calls us to settle matters quickly with others before they escalate, before anger grows to hatred, and even further goes to murder. Again, I hope that murder wouldn't come to your mind. This is just an extreme case that Jesus is using to get his point across of how we should live.
There's often something much deeper than what's on the surface, and the best way to eliminate it is to cut it off at the source. Jesus personifies this perfectly with the metaphor of the body. In verse 29, he states, "If your right eye causes you to stumble, gouge it out and throw it away." In verse 30, he says, "It is better for you to lose one part of your body than for your whole body to be thrown into hell."
Now, if you're like me and you don't pay attention in English class, then you probably read this and didn't think much of it. But this is an extreme imagery that Jesus uses to get his point across. He's saying that whatever the root of your hatred or lustful desires are, you need to cut it off as soon as possible so that it doesn't drag you away from God and his plan for you.
Jesus communicates so much in just these few verses and continues to help us understand how we should live as Christians.
Thank you so much for watching. I'm Griffin, and this is Hudson, and that was Bear the Cross. Let's go!
All right, is that a wrap? Make sure I stop it before
That's a wrap.